Woohoo! We're live
We're live
at the beginning of a new read-along. Fun times, fun times. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited. I forgot to even say this when we were chatting before we went live, how big of a miracle it is that my dad got Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we're excited
so
about
that
it.
I am able to be here today.
And at your other live show today.
Right. I was able to schedule any live shows because I do now have Wi-Fi again. Fun times. All right, yay. It is who are we, what are we here for? Junie B. Jones time. And so in this very first month of the Junie B. Jones read-along, we read the very first Junie B. Jones book, Junie B. Jones and the Stupid Smelly Bus. And then per our tradition of reading children's series, we also read nonfiction books. So we will also be discussing The Perfection Trap by Thomas Curran, which I think was a good, fun pick to lead us into this. Are my blues close that I chose? Hopefully they are. We decided they were close enough. So let us know if you're here. I'm excited. I'm just excited. Ruby's here. Hi, Ruby. Welcome to Junie B. Jones.
Woo!
Martine, what's your history with Junie B. Jones?
Okay, I definitely read Junie B. Jones growing up, like around when I was her age. Well, I mainly read it in like first and...
I was going to say, I think I was probably a little bit older.
Yeah, so she starts in kindergarten, but I started reading her, I think, in like end of first grade, beginning of second grade time.
That's probably also true for me.
So I really loved when she hit her first grader at last era, I would say. But I do know that I read enough of these books and enough times that when I was reading it this time, I like directly remembered everything that was going to happen next, you know.
I think that I tried to read like the first 3 or 4 of these, like maybe just even 5 years ago. So like these first few for me will definitely feel like I remember everything. But yeah, I was a Junie B. Jones girl growing up.
There were also a couple of them that I had as audiobooks on CDs growing up, particularly when we get to it, I'll mention it, but there's one Easter related one when she's a first grader that we had, and we listened to that an uncountable number of times to fall asleep. And so if the narrator started speaking right now, I'd be like, I know exactly who you are.
Cute. Hey, matching blue. I tried my best. Just like the two of you, do we match?
Kind of.
In a gray t-shirt?
Gray and grayish blue.
Right. Hello. Let us know if you guys read Junie B. Jones growing up. Should we discuss the nonfiction or Junie B. Jones first?
I feel like we should start with what we came here for, which is Junie B. Yeah.
Okay.
Did we rate it?
Yeah, are you going to tell me what you rated it?
Yeah, I rated it 4 stars.
I gave it 5 stars because I had to, which I don't think I gave any Magic Tree House 5 stars, so it probably is nostalgia, but Junie B. Jones. It made me so, like, I was just genuinely so happy reading it earlier, so.
I actually read most of it out loud because otherwise I was like, I know I'm just going to rush through it and like not enjoy it. So I was saying all the funny things out loud and like hitting the punchlines.
Mabel came up here a minute ago and was like, my book? And I read like just the first 2 pages before she was like, okay, all done. Out loud, but
one day she'll get through the rest of it.
One day she will. Cute like the two of you. Okay. I read, I think, all of the Junies at the time, and I remember getting the first grader at last one at a Scholastic book fair and being obsessed. I had like they made like a journal that you could fill out. I had that. I remember getting that for like a birthday or something.
So
and filling it out at Applebee's.
I didn't own that because money, but I remember sitting in a bookstore flipping through that whole journal to see what it said one day. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, I got what I needed out of this.
Oh, I must have read a few of them, but I don't have any specific memories. So you don't think you've read all of them. Are you going to read them along with us this time? Let us know. Was how mean kids are. For real. Having young kids and also like my nephew now, he just turned 7. I feel like, yeah, it feels true.
Kids are mean.
Like in this one, they talk about kids being mean on the bus specifically, and I'm like, yep, that is true.
Oh, I got bullied on the bus so badly. Like, Junie should be scared of the bus.
Martine would also like to hide in the closet.
I would.
Yeah, I had such a good time reading it and loving the drawings of her outfits. Yes, her velvet skirt. Okay. I mean, what do you want me to say about it?
I don't know.
Can you walk through it?
Did other people rate this one? What did you rate it?
Yeah, what did you rate it? Ruby said she had a good time reading it, but what does that mean?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not a number.
I didn't ride the bus to school, but I rode it home.
I would frequently beg my mother to drive me instead, but I usually rode the bus. So at least I had a partner on the bus. I had my twin with me all the time, so I was like not alone.
You which was fun. Yeah.
But yeah,
Lucille. IDK 5 stars. Good feelings. I'm glad we all had good feelings this month.
Okay. I would have been right there with you. And then at some point, maybe because I did read it out loud, so it was going slower than normal, I was like, I'm ready for it to be over.
I didn't feel that.
And like at that point, we were just headed to the nurse's office. And I was like, giggling. Move on.
I was giggling the whole time, kicking my little feet. I also do think that like coming off of Magic Treehouse, and I think we were all feeling like those were so repetitive towards the end of that series. And I don't think that this series is quite as repetitive. I think there's more like storytelling of like Junie B going through stuff and like the story propelling than like repetitiveness. But I'm sure by the time we're deep into this.
Yeah, I mean, so there are some repetitive elements, right? Like she will always be obsessed with curly hair. She will always bother the student with curly hair. On the other hand, she, unlike Jack and Annie, does progress forward in time. And so we see her experiences as she grows up, whereas Jack and Annie stay the same age the whole time.
They age up like once, right?
Right. And so their character development is very different from Junie B, I think.
Fun.
Plot.
I think I would agree.
The very first thing I wanted to talk about, because I highlighted it, with the text copyright was 1992.
Okay.
Which was before I was born. And of course, Magic Treehouse started coming out before I was born too. But I don't know why this one hit me so much. I was like, 1992, that was, a little while before I was born.
Yeah. Should we rehash what years we were born? I was born in 97.
I was born in 99.
Perfect. Fun. Okay, yeah, I did tab throughout this if we want to go through. Or do I have highlights and stuff?
I have highlights, but let's go through yours instead.
Okay. I'll try my best. You're better at this than I am walking through a story, but I will do my best. First and foremost, just the iconic first paragraph of these books. If I have a third kid and it's a daughter, would I fight for Beatrice to be her name? Potentially. Okay, good talk. But the first thing that I marked was when they ask about if she'll be riding the bus, and her mom says, yes, she'll be riding the bus. And Junie B says, that made me feel scary inside. She said that because I never rided on a bus before. Which I feel like, to me, I marked it too because it was like one of the first instances where she like says something incorrectly too, which this series gets like big flack for. Because a lot of people are like, you shouldn't let your kids read this because it's improper speak. But
I will say, I think that's actually what makes it more fun reading it as an adult.
I agree. It's
like you hear that it's a kid.
Hearing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It sounds like a child.
Whereas when you read The Magic Treehouse, Jack and Annie don't necessarily sound like kids. And like the words that they say. If you listen to Mary Pope read it, you're like, yeah, she's doing kid voices. But it's not the same. Like Junie B makes all the very typical developmental mistakes in English. So that's one thing that I find funny.
Yeah.
Especially because right after, so say what? Let me try again. I also make bad English sometimes. So maybe you shouldn't let your kids read it. So I read this again in like second grade, and in first grade, the reason that I didn't read it right away is because I was actually reading in English for the first time. Because for those of you who don't know, I went to kindergarten at a French charter school, still in America. Don't know why it was there, but we learned in French. We had some English reading lessons, but like most of our curriculum was in French. And so I was very behind on reading in English when I got to first grade and we moved to Florida. But that means when I started reading Junie B. Jones as a second grader, and I saw, especially in the like first grader at last where we're reading her journal, that she had trouble sometimes too. That was really helpful for me because I was like, oh, I'm not alone in this feeling. But like I'm trying and I'm not getting it right. And so in that way, I think it, like people suggest it might be harmful, but I think it's helpful in a way that they don't realize.
Yeah. Good insight.
Okay, you can move on now.
Moving forward. The next thing I marked was when she's saying that her teacher will meet her in the, like, will be at the school and she gets there on the bus, and her mom says, "Won't that be fun?" I nodded the word yes, but inside my head, I said the word no.
I related a lot to that statement.
Yeah, been there. And then the very next thing that I highlighted was when she gets on the bus and her mom says, "Why don't you sit right next to her? It'll be fun, I promise." And so I got on the bus, and guess what? It wasn't fun. Like,
Ruby
she's just already being so snarky. And guess what? Like, I just love the wording of these.
Yeah. Click on Ruby's comment.
Oh. Also, your kid not learning English just from this, I think it's fine as someone with 0 kids.
Yeah, this isn't the only way that kids are learning English.
Right. Typically. I also think too, like, to assume that this is the first thing they've ever read also doesn't add up. Like, this is a chapter book, you know, like you're reading stories much before this. Yeah. But I'm also trying to think, like, when I read these as a kid, did I recognize that she was speaking incorrectly? I think I did. And I also think that that can be used as a good, like, lesson of teaching grammar also.
I think later in the series, there are times when people do correct her.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So
we're here to find out.
Yeah. That's the mission. Are you still in chapter 1 or are you passing chapter?
I'm past chapter 1.
Okay, can I just say a couple things from chapter 1? This is one of my favorite lines, and I think from a developmental perspective, it's very interesting because it shows us how children learn, like, about emotions and things. And so she's talking to her teacher, and she said, "Frowning is when your eyebrows look grumpy."
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really funny way of describing it. Also, I forget why, but at one point said, "I can beat that boy up," I think.
I love that plot line. I really do. Because she brings it up again and keeps calling him that kid I could beat up, I think. Or like, I mean, my next highlight is like of the same merit of speaking emotions, because it's when she says, I hate it in this stupid smelly bus. Then my eyes got a little bit wet. I wasn't crying though, because I'm not a baby. That's why.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Junie B, we know you're crying. It's okay. It's overwhelming.
There's this quote in chapter 2 that says, "Just don't worry. I did though. I worried very much." Which I related to.
It is the thing. I feel like she does it a lot, where she does like say something or something is said to her, and then she's like says her true emotions.
Yes.
To the reader, right? It's like, giving The Office for kids.
He is masculine.
So the camera says.
I also had a moment in chapter 2 where I said, quote, tummy ache girlies, because she said she felt very droopy when she got up and my stomach was squeezy and I couldn't eat my cereal.
Her was nervous. We got you, Junie B. We're tummy ache girlies too.
Yeah.
Okay, and now I'm to Lucille and Grace because the next thing I highlighted, because she's finally learning the names of the kids in her class. This is her first day of kindergarten. And she says, I like that name of Lucille, I said. Because guess why? Seals are my favorite animals. That's like, I think it's so funny.
She just, the connections are so, I don't know.
Like, now that I have, like, Mabel is getting very talkative and, like, says a lot of just, like, silly stuff like that, where it is, like,
yeah,
that is how kids think.
Yeah. And
Because
that's
I don't know how to spell it. Like, you're already, like, saying the name. So she, like, the seal.
Yeah.
There's no concept of, like, oh, it's not the same.
Right.
So cute.
Victoria said something. You need to be watching these comments.
I feel like it's my first day ever. Yeah. He stepped on my shoe. I hate him. Yeah.
Very, like, big emotions from small things, too.
Yeah. Chandler, who is my niece, who's, like, 3.5, her newest thing is every time somebody says, like, no or, like, doesn't do what she wants, she says, you're not invited to my birthday party. In, like, the most dramatic way. And then, but, like, throughout a day, you'll get re-invited and uninvited from her birthday party about 20 times.
That's incredible. In a store the other day, I literally heard a child tell her mom, the mom, like, told her to do something, and she was like, no, I don't want to. And then the mom turned to her friend and was like, she's so sassy. And she was like, I heard you. That's not very nice.
Yeah, eventually they learn.
Do.
Again, this is the same thing where she's learning everybody's name. She says, I learned Lucy. Like, this is quite a ways later. I'm, like, pretty far in. Like,
yeah, you're done with chapter 3. You're gone.
I'm in the middle of the book. I'm in chapter, God knows. I learned Lucille and also a girl named Charlotte and another girl named Grace. Then I learned a boy named Ham, which we eat at Grandma Miller's. Like, it's the same, just, like, silly connection to a name.
Yeah.
I only have one more, like, way at the end of the book.
Okay, you say that and then I'll go through some of mine. How about that?
Okay. Oh, so this is when she finally gets to the bathroom. She like gets out and goes to wash her hands, and she notices that the gold star sticker is still on her forehead, which, like, you or me, if you were like, oh, I forgot I had this thing on my shirt or had this thing on my head, would be like, oh, it would catch you off guard. But her reaction was, it looked very beautiful up there.
She loves her gold star.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my last one.
Some other funny things that she said when she's talking about the little girl who had curly black hair. She said, which is my favorite kind of head.
Yeah. Black curly hair, that my favorite kind of head.
I don't like that kind of door. If it closes on you by accident, it will cut you in half and you will make a squishy sound. She just thinks so extremely like little kids do, and I think it's so funny. Then a big puff of black smelly smoke came out the back end of it. It's called bus breath, I think. Because if loud screechy noises get inside your head, you have to take an aspirin. I saw that on a TV commercial.
She talked a lot about how kindergarten means you're not watching TV, which I didn't remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering too, like, in future books, how much TV she watches at home, because not all of these are like at school. There's a lot
to investigate. I also liked how she referenced how children don't understand how time works, which, to be fair, like, adults don't understand how time works either. So she stayed on the bus for about an hour or 3.
Yep.
She also had that thing about licking her shoes. So which is just No.
disgusting.
It just is.
That's not accurate.
This one from chapter 7. I love fish very much. I eat them for dinner with coleslaw. Favorite movie, which is called The Wizard of Odds.
I didn't catch that.
Yep. When she was this as a person who's gone to the optometrist my entire life.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
Very funny to me. So they have the poster for the eye test, which, by the way, I don't think I've ever used one of those posters for my eye test because my eye tests are a little more than just a poster on a wall. So that's silly to me in general, but you know, the letters are like bigger towards the top and smaller towards the bottom. And she says, you have to yell the E the loudest. That's how come it's so big. And so if Junie B had to go to my eye appointments and saw how big they have to make the letters on the screen for me, she would yell every single line. And it's my favorite thing because with my glasses, I see like pretty well, still not 20/20, but like I see things and I forget sometimes how bad my vision truly is. And then I'll go to the optometrist and they'll take my glasses away.
Say, read this.
What's on the screen. And my sister, for many years of my life, would be in the same room with me and we would just like hop in and out of the chair and switch for our appointment. And she laughs hysterically every time I try to read the big letters because I get them wrong and they're so big and it's very obvious to her that they're wrong. So that's
rude.
I also related still as an adult to this statement when people ask if things hurt. So she said, it's mostly all better now, but if I press it very hard with my thumb, I can still make it hurt. Which
when she's putting her band-aids on.
As a hypochondriac, I relate to because I'm like, I think I'm fine, and then I like make myself not fine. I'm like, I'm not fine.
The stress.
Yeah, that was my last thing. So those were all my Junie B thoughts.
I think she's iconic. She is the moment. She's hilarious.
She is, and I think again, she just actually sounds like a kid.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, Mabel's starting to talk a lot now.
Yeah.
She's going to say a lot more in the rest of her life.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to hear some of these things.
Yeah, we're like just
getting to know when you do because I think they're
yeah, they're funny. They are funny.
So, did anybody else have any other thoughts on the first Junie B. Jones book?
Any standout moments? There's like some milestones that I know happens like in her life throughout this series, but I don't remember like which books things happen in. Yeah. So I'm just excited to keep going.
Yeah. Like, how many until there are so many, I feel like, before she becomes a first grader.
Yeah, there's a lot. I have the schedule pulled up. First grader. We won't be to first grade until April next year, right? So
for me, because I definitely think I read more of the first grader ones than I did the like kindergarten ones because I was reading them as a second grader. I think
I'm fairly certain I've read all of them.
I definitely haven't read all of them. Also, let me check the publication date for First Grader at Last because that might have also had something to do with why I read all of them.
Yeah.
Because if it's so late in the series, I think it came out when I was a kid.
Ruby says only read the First Grader. So like you had never read this one at all before, Ruby? Question
mark. So First Grader at Last was published in 2001. So that's way closer to still before I was reading, but
like 4, yeah.
Closer. And I also think I read more of the first grader ones because she also has glasses in those ones.
Oh. You were like, I am she.
Yes. I was like, I also wear glasses. And
we
like
are Oh.
She only read the first grader book, not the other one.
Oh, okay. Capiche. Well, fun. That'll be fun to get to them when we get to them next year.
All of my iconic favorites, Ruby will be reading.
First grader. I think I'll feel more that way about the younger ones, but we'll see.
Yeah. Interesting. As a reminder, before we talk about the nonfiction, which of the Junie B. Jones books are we reading next month?
Next month. So we are doing one Junie B. Jones and a nonfiction, and then the opposite month is 3 Junie B. Jones books, and then 1 Junie B. Jones and a nonfiction. So next month we're reading 3 Junie B. Jones books. We're reading Junie B. Jones and a Little Monkey Business, Junie B. Jones and Her Big Fat Mouth, and Junie B. Jones and Some Sneaky Peaky Spying.
Which, looking at the titles, I already know I have some stories involving those ones to tell when we get there. So
perfect.
But
I think by the time we have a month of 3, we'll feel fully invested in this.
Yeah. And be like, oh God, she just keeps going.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. I don't necessarily feel like there was like huge lessons learned in this one.
No.
Like, I think if given the chance again, she would hide from the bus. Although we know that she's going to continue to go to kindergarten and have to ride the bus. But I think some of the other ones have more, like, way bigger lesson learned. Okay, yay.
Okay, should we talk about The Perfection Trap?
Embracing the Power of Good Enough by Thomas Curran. Yeah, let's talk about it. Do we want to talk about what we rated it first and foremost?
Yeah, let's talk about what we rated it. Who here read it also?
Yeah, who read the nonfiction with us?
What did you rate it?
Almost my favorite thing about doing these children's series that we've done. I'm glad that you decided to do it with Magic Treehouse is the nonfiction situation. I think it's fun to discuss nonfiction and read it with other people, I guess. I just finished this morning. I gave it 3.5. I do think that usually I struggle a little bit. Like, this is more of like a textbooky nonfiction than like I don't know what else you get what I'm trying to say. Like, it's very like, fact driven, especially through the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a lot of opinions in the end. And it went pretty political in the end, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, like, altogether, I think there were sections of the book I enjoyed more than others, but altogether 3.5 stars. Like, there were sections that, like, I really related to that I was like, oh, this is so good. And then other sections that were just kind of like throwaway to me. So it wasn't that long. So
yeah. Okay. I gave this 4 stars. I was losing steam with it though. I will say, like, at the beginning I was like, this is just what I need, and by the end I was like, oh God, like, stop talking. And I will say that if you want something that packs more of a punch about perfectionism, then I recommend one chapter of Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, where she talks about perfectionism as an excuse to not be vulnerable and basically a defense mechanism to avoid vulnerability. And the author even referenced Brene Brown in this book.
Yes.
And that was one of the most brilliant things he did.
And the best thing he did was mention a woman.
Her work is insane, so good, and her writing's incredible. And just that chapter completely changed my view on perfectionism in general. So now reading this, I was like, she did it better in one chapter than you did, you know? But
for those of you who don't know, we are reading a Brene Brown in November for this read along. So should be fun. I also thought that, like, what I thought this book in terms of the word perfectionism was going to be going in, I feel like it wasn't talking about like not needing everything to be perfect. I felt like it was really talking about like the need, like striving towards like always needing to better or like one up, which to me wasn't necessarily the like exact definition of perfectionism I was expecting it to be, but still valuable.
Yeah. Ruby DNF'd at 70% and then started
and just got back to it today. So sorry. I wish it was half as long.
The middle needed to be cut in half.
So me specifically, I feel like you know this about me as a person. Sorry, the like sump pump I think just turned on, so I feel like the whole house is vibrating. It just shut off. What was I gonna say? Oh, about like he focused a long time about perfectionism in schooling.
Mhm.
And I simply do not care about school. Like, my life is so detached from like a university setting that I'm like, this doesn't matter to me.
That
And
was my
also I feel like the author really thought that higher education was like so important.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
But he's a professor. Like, that's why he's writing a book. That's why he, like, that's
I
why this.
also have to say, I think reading the school part was not even my favorite part of the book as a student currently, but as a teaching assistant, watching other students.
Oh,
Because it's a problem I've noticed a lot lately, particularly the problem of this really fear-based way of going about their work and it not resulting in a good outcome, not just for their mental health, but also in their work in general. And so I really appreciated the discussions about how like they're striving so much to be perfect, they actually don't do a good job at all.
yeah.
Because I'm seeing that a lot in like a lot. And so I just thought that was interesting because I can see exactly how the schooling system that I've grown up in has contributed to that. And I'm trying really hard as a TA and a mentor to undergraduate students to like destroy that.
A little bit like, you need to not think so hard about this to
Right.
just like get started.
And my major professor has to do the same thing with me. Earlier this summer, I sent her this really long message because I felt stuck in my thesis. And I was like, here's the problem, and here's the research I did about it, and blah, 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 blah. And she goes, you think you're stuck, but you're not. You answered your own question in your email to me. So just believe in yourself a little bit more. And I have to tell the students I work with the same thing. They'll be like, is this right? And I'm like, yeah,
You
I
already
think
know it is.
so.
Yeah.
You already did the research to find out that that is the only right answer we have. Like, you're fine, you're doing good. What I care about is that you try and you did. So like, it's the right answer. It's okay. But I totally see how if your life is more detached from school than mine is, that you care about that.
That's the section that I read right away this morning. So this morning I actually left my house, went and got a coffee, and told Chris I was going to park so that I could read this book for like an hour, or there was no way I was getting it done.
Yeah.
And so like right when I parked my car with my little coffee, that's like the section that I started, and I was just like, ew. But then immediately following that, there was a section about parenting that obviously I found very interesting. So
I will say, so my big problem with this book is that I think it is not what it sold itself to be.
Yep. That's what I was getting at with like the perfectionism word. To me wasn't really what this felt like.
It wasn't that made me feel that way. Can you read me the subtitle again?
Oh yeah. Embracing the power of good enough.
Great. One chapter was about that.
Yeah, the end.
The second to last chapter was about how we as people can embrace good enough. The last chapter was about what needs to change in society. And I read this in a vlog and I said to the vlog, sorry to spoil it, but I was like, I'm waiting for him to get to what we can do about it. Because he's spending the whole time making a case about why it's a problem. But I read this book because it is a problem. And I know that. If I didn't have a problem with perfectionism, I would never pick up this book.
This comment, I feel that about a lot of self-helpish nonfiction, the way I feel a lot about self-helpish nonfiction, which is what we're going to be focusing on mostly for this read-along, is a lot of more self-helpish type nonfiction. Is like, I wanted like a takeaway or like an actionable step coming away from this, and I feel none. Like, I don't feel like there's like, okay, how do I fix this? Because I also feel like in the end of his like actionable things are like, well, just stop trying to be better. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, that's also not realistic. Like, you need the collective whole to do that for you to be able to do that.
Right. And it's also like, so in the chapter where he talks about what you personally can do, and he talks about like radical acceptance, that chapter was only like 8 minutes of reading for me, whereas the one about society was like 26 minutes, which is fine. I get like society is a big problem. I got your thesis. That's okay. But for me, the problem was like, you can say more about what acceptance looks like, how you practice it.
Yeah.
Not just the outcomes.
Like one little paragraph about like, if you're a manager, this is how you should approach your
right.
Like okay, say more.
Basically, all he said was like, you should practice radical acceptance and realize that you're good enough. And I was like, how?
Yeah.
And so when the subtitle is embracing the power of good enough, but he said like one thing about that. He just said that you should. And I was like, I could have read your subtitle and known that.
Right. Okay, yeah. I also want to complain that all he was doing is saying how bad perfectionism and never offering any solutions. I do feel like, Ruby, I said this to our team before we started, that like the end may have been what you were wanting from the book, but I also don't know if it was like it wasn't quite satisfying enough. Like he tried a little bit more, but it still didn't hit. Yeah. I do feel like in some books like this that have like steps that you've already heard, like it is still good to like hear it again and refresh your memory. But
because my problem is I know how to make myself feel better, but then I don't do it. So I need somebody to tell me like over and over again, like you should do this. Yeah. Which is interesting because he said several times that he was a recovering perfectionist. So okay, like put some of that into this. What have you learned? What have you done to fix that? You know?
Yeah, I do feel like a lot of the stuff that like hit home really just made me feel bad about myself because it is just like, okay, yeah, I do that. And I'm probably gonna keep doing that. Like
one thing that he did say that I appreciated though, and this was in the last 2 chapters somewhere. He was talking about some students he had worked with, and he was like, and they came to the conclusion like way before the older generation did, that it's not them that's broken, it's society that is.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do like the affirmation that is like, it's not your fault that you're like this, you know?
And just the talk of like how it's going to keep getting worse because more people are affected by it, and the more people that are affected by it, it gets projected onto the next people.
Yeah. And I think for me, like my experience with perfectionism, I can be really defeatist. I work really hard to work against it. And so when I still fall into the trap, I blame myself a lot for that. But the truth is that it's not my fault, you know? Like, even I have a major professor who's so supportive. Like, she's the best. And she's fully for like work-life balance and doing what I need to do and all that stuff. And still sometimes she says things that leads me to believe it's not okay and that I should be doing more. And like that's just because she speaks the way that all of society speaks sometimes. And so like we have these backslidey moments, but like it makes me feel bad, but it's not my fault about that. And so when you say like I feel bad, I do that, it's like, but the point is it's not your fault that you do that.
I'm curious though, I did find it interesting he talked about like the 3 types of like and I think that we may be related to different ones. And I don't like the one that I relate to the most. I'm gonna find, I definitely tabbed like when he was saying what they are. Do you know which one? Or like on a scale of the 3, let me. Okay. Socially prescribed perfectionism is directed from the environment. It involves the belief that others expect me to be perfect. I don't relate to that much. I mean, like some, obviously, I feel like everybody.
Yeah.
And then, why I'm missing one. Oh, self-oriented perfectionism is directed from within. It involves a way of existing in the world that says I must be perfect and nothing but perfect. Which I relate to.
And then other-oriented.
And then the other-oriented is directed outward. It involves the belief that other people must be perfect. And I also think that I relate to that one, which makes me feel icky. I think I have very high expectations of other people sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that one makes me feel gross.
Which one do you think I'm highest in?
I think also you think that you need to be perfect. Like
Okay.
the first one.
Yeah. That's interesting because I do think I have an unhealthy dose of the self one. But I think my biggest problem is the socially prescribed. And I know that we differ in that because sometimes I come to you and I say something about like YouTube or something, and you'll be like,
I say something a lot that I'm wondering if you're about to say that I say a lot. So go ahead.
I'll talk about something that's bothering me, and you'll be like, I'm really sorry that that gets to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like I wish they didn't get to you because like their
Mm-hmm.
opinion doesn't matter. But like to me it does, and I can point to specific experiences in my life that have taught me that it does matter.
Yeah.
And so I definitely have a problem with socially prescribed for sure. I also have some issues with other oriented sometimes. But I definitely think that socially prescribed and self are higher than other for me. Because it's something I've talked about in therapy a lot. I have a lot more grace for other people than I do for myself.
Okay, so that comment, I know that a lot of times, like anyone who comes to me and is like, oh, I did this thing, like it's so embarrassing, that I'm always like, if someone did that, like said that to you, or like you're overthinking this, like if it happened, if it was someone else and you were perceiving them, you would never think the way that like you're thinking they're thinking about you. You'd be like, oh, that's no big deal, move on. Where like other people, when you're thinking you did something embarrassing, you think those people are still thinking about it. It's like, no, they're over it.
Yeah.
Nobody's thinking about you as much as you think they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know like how much to say in this conversation.
I know. Yeah. I just think in my like ranking of what I think I relate to the most is probably personal, other, and then social. And I think a lot of other people probably have social higher on that.
They do. And I mean he even said that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the real difference. I think I've always been high in self and social. I think self has decreased over the years, but social has remained high. As I've been working against my perfectionism, the thing is that I truly do believe it is easier to address self-oriented perfectionism for some people, and I'm one of those people, than it is to address socially prescribed, because social pressures you have no control over. And so like I've tried to be better about how I talk to myself, but I let other people's voices be louder than my own voice,
Mm.
you know?
Mhm.
And sometimes my own voice is telling me what it thinks other people are thinking.
Yeah.
So a lot of my self-oriented perfectionism is not even fully the self. It's me being like,
You
I need
think
to
other
perfect.
people don't think you're doing enough.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's all about other people, and that's why like at the beginning of graduate school, like imposter syndrome is the biggest problem that early graduate students go through and that I went through. And the funny thing is that like, okay, so I started the program at the time as another person in my lab, and if we had just been able to see what was happening to the other person at the time, we would have felt very differently than we did. Instead, we both saw the fact that we were both individually going into our major professor's office and crying about things. What we didn't see was that a day later, the other one would go for her meeting with the major professor, sit down and cry about the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We were only seeing our experiences and thinking that everybody else expected us to deal with it differently than we were, but really we were all struggling with the exact same things.
Yeah.
And I think that's like society in general, because we all want to think we're special and that other people have never gone through the things that we've gone through before.
Yeah.
But the truth is that they have. And that's what's silly about socially prescribed perfectionism, is that, like, yes, some people do expect us to be better than we are or to be perfect all the time, but most of the time people are like, no, you're fine, but I need to be perfect. And so the truth, like, that's the weird thing about socially prescribed perfectionism being such a big deal, is we say it's from the outside, but really we're putting all this pressure on ourselves while other people are saying, no, you're okay, it's me that's the problem. No, you're okay, it's me that's the problem.
Yeah.
Which is really hard to deal with.
Did you like the section about social media?
I thought it was okay. Like, the weird thing about, I think maybe you feel the same way, the era of social media that we've lived through so far.
I feel like you choose who you follow too. Like,
yeah, but I also feel like it has changed over time, right? So as social media began, it was very much a highlight reel. And nowadays, half the posts you see are like, reminder, social media is a highlight reel.
right.
And people posting their real lives and being like, for real. And so I do think we're coming out on a different side of social media where a lot more people are saying, like, people's lives aren't perfect. Like, you're not seeing it.
Right.
And so I'm wondering, my hope is that it was really like a dip for society where we initially were like, oh, social media, and that crashed us a bit. And I'm hoping we're going to come out the other side having learned what it does, but I don't know. Maybe I'm totally wrong, and maybe I've just done a better job at, like, following people who tell me that
that's what I think. Like, right, like, I know what he's talking about people who always post like everything's perfect, but when I think of those like content creators who are that way, like, they give me the ick now.
Yeah,
It's like the people that I do like to follow, even like more influencer type people, are people
who are real.
Yeah,
I agree.
I don't think there's as much of an allure to like the perfect, or like I don't think that like the travel influencer thing is like as big of a thing anymore, where people think that like, oh, these people just don't work and get to travel. Like, I think that people realize that that's not true at this point.
Yeah, and yet I do think it's interesting because I think people who, even under the guise of being realistic, have less realistic lives and post about them in less realistic ways do get more followers and views still now. Like, people who are like, realistic day in my life, and then it's still a portrayal of a day that's like a good day for them,
Right,
and not
kids can throw a tantrum, that's not realistic, right?
right. Like, there are just things that social media still does, and people still get rewarded for those things. Like, messy house, watched less, you know, and that's fair. But like, at the same time, I still think it perpetuates some of the things in society that make people feel less than.
Yeah.
Do we want to look at what Ruby said?
Yes, we do. Have you tried not doing that?
It's my favorite advice.
I related to the first one, the personal one, I think. It was personal, social, and other. I think I have the opposite of the other version. Like, saying that like, you don't expect much of others.
Like, you don't expect enough of others. You just let them get away with anything.
Yeah. Which is bad in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. That's how I feel.
Yeah. I feel like I had more to say. Go ahead.
I just feel like as I got to the end, I did feel like a lot of his solutions at the end were just like we needed baby steps, and he was only giving major steps.
Yeah. I agree.
Like, here's what you can do, but then here's the change that society needs to make, and it was only like, here's the change society needs to make.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, serve me my 4-day work week. Tell my boss that. Like,
what was I thinking? brain go brrr. Oh, I did use this book as an example of how like graduate school has kind of broken my brain. Because sometimes I think I haven't really learned much in graduate school. This is a false statement, but sometimes you worry that you haven't grown, right? But there were a couple of times where he was talking about his research and he would provide a nice graph of his regression that he had run, and he was explaining it, and I stopped and actually looked at it and understood it, which scared me a little because in the past I would have just been like, yeah, and he showed his work and done. But now I was like, oh, this is how he did that. And I was like, oh, someone paid attention in quant class. So that was silly for me.
Proud of you.
Also, just like, I don't know that his work, how do I say this? Warranted a book.
Okay, yeah.
Also, and I think it's funny that he didn't address exactly how to deal with it on your own, because he spent so much of the book when he was setting up the problem talking to these two scientists who
like, give me their book.
They treat a ton of people with perfectionism, and they were like, yep, it's a problem. But I was like, but how are you treating, like, you treat them, how?
Right.
And he left that out, and he just went, I'm going to tell you to accept things.
Yeah.
And I was like, you literally had the people sitting in front of you, and you didn't think
at some point when like that conversation was ending, he was like, and there was some college students waiting for our tables, so we parted ways. Like,
we parted ways. And I was like, right when I needed them to start talking. So I would have liked for like those two to write a book.
They probably have.
Mayhaps, but he didn't name drop a book.
No.
He cited some articles, and I did look at those citations.
Oh.
Like, I didn't look up the articles, but I clicked on the. So
were you doing it on your Kindle? Okay.
Yeah. So I was able to click on it and look at the citation, and see like what journal it was published in and when and stuff. Things that matter sometimes, but
I do think too, like, this did, I think it came out in 2022, and he mentioned that like this was written right after the pandemic, which like now I do feel like we are a little bit more removed from the pandemic, that I would have liked even the space of like, okay, more regular
an update.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was a good first pick though.
Yeah, like I think this was a good read, I guess, even if the takeaway wasn't, but
which type of perfectionism do you think Junie B is highest in?
Ooh. I don't know. My kid is screaming.
Same.
I don't think that she, maybe other oriented, or I don't think she is much like self. At least in this one, there was nothing that was like she was expecting.
And I don't think she cares what other people think either.
Is Junie B have no perfectionism?
I think she does, because she sure expects some people to behave differently than they do, I would say.
Like, I think she expect, like, isn't that other oriented where you expect other people to do? Yeah, that's probably the most her.
So I think she thinks she's great, but other people need to change. You know, that's the vibe I get from her.
Yeah.
And Victoria seems to agree with me.
Yeah. She has no self-awareness. Correct. Like the fact that this girl was just like in the school for hours. Like, one, it felt like when she was beat-bopping around the school, like nobody was in there looking for her.
Yeah.
But like never at any point through this, other than when the teacher comes back right after the buses get loaded and she's like, one of my students is missing. But then at no point after this, while she's in the school, does she say she hears people being like, Junie B.
You emptied out so quickly.
Considering a child was missing.
No, not even that. just like, did they not have an after-school program or
Oh,
something?
yeah,
Like, there
right.
had to be people around.
It was
The
just Curran the
principal was
janitor.
gone. Like, where are these people? I think
are
there's
also
other
offering
people judging us out loud, Michaela, but that's that's a different story. But
okay.
but I do think it will be interesting as we continue to read the Junie B. Jones series that I think some socially prescribed perfectionism might creep in as she starts getting like grades and things, because I feel like I remember there being some tension around some of that in the future. And so I think the truth of the matter is, in this first book, like, it doesn't seem like she went to preschool, right?
It doesn't mention like any like, oh, I've been in a classroom before.
No. And so I really think this is the first time that she's interacting with a large number of other kids who will have different views from her.
True, even like I feel like my kids know how to interact socially because even daycare, not even like a preschool.
It's very
Like,
clear
true,
that she
was Junie B like is her mom a stay-at-home mom?
right. Like, to me, she
I
reads
remember.
as not having much interaction so
Yeah.
far, and definitely not in a classroom setting. And so I'm interested to see how that messes with her personality, because she's only had one day of school in this book. And so it hasn't had time to impact her psyche yet.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see.
Well, yay. I'm glad we circled back to
See how I did that?
Junie B. Okay. We'll do this again next month to talk about 3 Junie B. Jones books. Should I name them again?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
We can post the reading list on like our community tab or something. But
I think I linked the doc in the description of this.
Brilliant.
I think I remembered too.
Somebody yell at her if she didn't. But
hey, is the schedule in the description of this? People watching this.
But I also wanted to state next month's is going to be on my channel, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So we'll see you over there.
Make sure you subscribe to Martina. I also linked her in the description of this video, so go subscribe right now if you're not. I think I did the responsible thing in the description today.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Okay.
That's
I'll be back on this channel in an hour for another live show. So bye.